Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland, and this was an exclusive on Covert Action magazine for the last 2 weeks, and I was very pleased. They did a great job. I recommend that you go to Covert Action magazine, and it's exactly as it's said. covertactionmagazine.com and look at their work. I just subscribed because they have a huge archive of articles going back many years. So I'm looking forward to digging into them. As usual, this article represents days and days and days of work. Please make a donation to support my work on either fundraiser, Patreon, or PayPal. Thank you. Also, there are a gazillion links and visuals in this. You really need to get to the original article, which I will post on on China Rising, and the link will be with PayPal, with YouTube and SoundCloud and all the others. Here we go. Explosive exposé blows the cover off Huawei Meng Wanzhou's 2018 sting operation in Vancouver, Canada. The truth and consequences of connecting the dots. Pictured above, Meng Wanzhou and Huawei, two huge bullseyes in the USA's ever-increasing campaign to decouple China, especially its high-tech juggernaut, from global trade and commerce. Left is a CCTV video capture of Meng's apprehension at Vancouver Airport on 1 December 2018, and right is her employer, Huawei, the world's biggest, most successful ICT company, and 5G behemoth sans pareil. Based on this expose, that is Meng in front on the left, followed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, Mandarin interpreter, and in back, RCMP Constable Dawn But, who filled out Meng's arrest report. Note, British Columbia's Supreme Court in British Columbia's Supreme Court, Meng Wanzhou's lawyers are questioning 10 people surrounding her 2018 arrest. Some of them from Canadian law enforcement are discussed in this expose. There will be a second round of hearings in December 2020. Stay tuned. Here we go. 1 December 2020 is the second anniversary of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou's arrest in Vancouver, Canada, or kidnapping, depending on your point of view. If you work for the USA's Department of Justice, Treasury, and State, with the CIA/NSA cheering from the galleries, it's just a simple extradition request to, quote, carry out the law, end of quote. If you are company executive Frederica Pierucci, Meng was kidnapped by the USA just like he was in 2013, whereupon he was imprisoned for 2 years on similar, he would say, trumped-up charges. His seizure was used to extort France's flagship Alstom Corporation to pay $772 million in fines, ransom according to Pierucci, and sell off its most valuable portfolios to its U.S. competitor, General Electric, GE, all to gain his release. Pierucci survived his maximum security incarceration and wrote a book about it called The American Trap, My Battle to Expose America's Secret Economic War Against the Rest of the World. The USA's booty for the U.S. Treasury was to grab what at the time was the largest fine ever assessed, and for GE to seize key assets from and weaken one of its biggest global competitors. In Meng's case, former assistant U.S. attorney in New York, Nick Ackerman, who was a Watergate prosecutor, and Joseph Campbell, director of Navigant Consulting and former FBI agent, believe the U.S.'s goal is to get her to sing about Huawei's internal operations and name names. In other words, extort information out of her. We can also add that her seizure is just one more in a long list of anti-China, quote, maximum pressure measures that the Trump administration has been ratcheting up since 2017. Pierucci and Meng are two headline catchers, but they are not alone. 8 foreign executives had already been arrested by 2007 using the U.S.'s sweeping antitrust laws. There are many others, including executives from Abraj Group, Martinair Cargo, and Parker ITR SRL. Largely ignored by the mainstream media, the MSM, there is also Wang Weijing, former Chinese diplomat turned Huawei marketing executive who was arrested in Poland in 2019 for espionage. Also not reported much is that inside the USA, Chinese scientists and academics continue to be arrested or are mysteriously dying, with many more in the arrest pipeline, like Hao Zhang last month. Whether the target is political, economic, or a real crook, antitrust lawsuits involve building legal cases which are hard work, expensive, and must eventually be made part of the public record, making them more accountable. While an integral part of USA's diplomacy, going back to the Cold War, since 2017, the Trump administration has increasingly been using a second form of enforcement, legal or of the loan shark variety, take your pick. And these are financial sanctions and economic/trade embargoes against targeted countries, that their companies and executives. This includes purported, quote, allies, too, like France and Germany. The beauty for the USA is these sanctions are frequently applied against targets for violating other unilateral U.S. sanctions, like against Cuba in France's case and against Iran and Syria with Germany. This opens up America's perceived geopolitical enemies and commercial competitors to thousands of gotcha traps. For example, a component from your company was used in part sold to the targeted state/business. Your company owns shares in another company in a similar transaction, or they paid or got paid via SWIFT, S-W-I-F-T bank transfer. Well, that's the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, which the U.S. effectively controls via the Bank of International Settlements, abbreviated BIS. U.S. sanctions have quickly become imperial fractal designs, which metastasize and multiply themselves across global commerce and trade. Who needs expensive, accountable antitrust lawsuits? It's easy to declare sanctions, and often this extortion is all that is needed to get the desired effect. There are countless thousands of countries, businesses, and persons listed on the U.S. Treasury's sanction web pages. It's a hell of a racket, to be sure. This closed sanction loop enshrined in the Trump-era CAATSA, that's the abbreviation CAATSA, which stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act 2017, is a perpetual motion machine for American businesses to extort international competitors, as was the case for Frederic Pierucci and Alstom Corporation, as well as a geopolitical wrecking ball for U.S. Departments of Treasury, Justice, and State. And pictured above is one of 2 U.S. Treasury websites that lists its massive global sanction and embargo program, Note CAATSA. Continuing, this U.S. modus operandi sure appears to be the case with Meng Wanzhou and Huawei. What makes Meng's story so volatile is that due to her being arrested/kidnapped in Canada, Her case is now a menage a trois, with Ottawa being the submissive, some might say masochistic Sino-American superpower monkey caught in the middle. Upon close examination, Canada and the USA claiming that they are only, quote, respecting its extradition treaties, that they must defer to their, quote, independent judiciaries and honor, quote, rule of law, is showing gross hypocrisy, if not many inconsistencies and fault lines. At least U.S. President Donald Trump admitted publicly what routinely goes on behind closed doors. On 11 December 2018, just days after Meng's apprehension, he said he'd be happy to use her as a bargaining chip to win a better trade deal with China. Now we're talking turkey. With that preamble, let's dig into Meng's apprehension in Vancouver. On 22 August 2018, 100 days before Meng's 1 December 2018 detention in Canada, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York in Brooklyn, New York City, issued her arrest warrant for, quote, conspiracy to defraud multiple international institutions, end of quote. It was read out at Meng's first court hearing on 7 December 2018, detailing the USA claims that she misled banks to circumnavigate unilateral American sanctions on Iran, sanctions that Canada opposes, which is rich hypocritical irony indeed. Arrest warrants are a matter of public record, but a thorough search of the usual online databases draws a blank for 46, now 48-year-old Meng in the above court files. Why? Was it ever properly published in August 2018, as is the normal case? Or was it kept secret? Why is it missing now? Checking using Chinese search engines like Baidu and Sogo, etc., where stuff is often posted that is not seen in the West, also draws a blank. I have amassed a good collection of U.S. and Canadian Meng/Huawei legal documents to create an online library accessible to the public at the end of this expose, which I'm calling the Meng Huawei Online Library. This suggests it was never properly published in the first place so that Meng and Company would not be alerted. Another interesting political aspect of her apprehension is that it was not made public for 4 full days until 5 December 2020. Meng was in transit at the Vancouver Airport to continue on another commercial flight to Mexico City. Why such a long wait to tell the world? Typically, captors are anxious to tell the world about their, quote, victory in apprehending their catch. At the same time, the captive concerned usually wants to buy time before it becomes big news so as to gather as much information as possible. No Canadian or U.S. press conference seems to have been held to make the announcement, so it can be assumed that Meng's lawyers leaked it to the media. We know that Meng was able to call her lawyer on 1 December 2018 as she requested to call at 2:27 p.m., 3 hours after she was seized by Canada Border Security Agency, the CBSA, meaning immigration agents. Here is the court-registered timeline. 11:10 a.m., Meng arrives at YVR. Note YVR is the code for Vancouver Airport, on Cathay Flight CX-838 with a companion and gets off the flight. A provisional arrest warrant had been issued in Vancouver the day before by a Supreme Court of BC, meaning British Columbia Justice, that ordered, quote, all peace officers having jurisdiction in Canada to immediately arrest Wanzhou Meng, end of quote. 3 CBS agents are on the jetway and screen passengers as they leave the plane. The border agents have a description of what Meng is wearing. 2 RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers are observing. Meng is identified, told she was being detained, not told about the arrest warrant, and 2 of her phones and 1 belonging to a traveling partner are seized and placed in Mylar evidence bags. 11:35 a.m. Meng is escorted by 2 CBSA agents to the secondary screening area where she is left by herself for 10 minutes. She is not free to leave or speak to any third parties. 11:45 a.m. Meng is brought to counter 21 in the secondary screening area, and the 2 agents begin to question her and search her belongings. 12:03 p.m. Meng's bags are retrieved from the luggage carousel. 12:13 p.m. A third CBSA agent approaches counter 21 and speaks with the other 2 officers. 12:14 p.m. Agent sees an iPad, MacBook, and USB stick from Meng's luggage. My note, all her electronic devices were put into bags provided by the U.S. FBI. 12:20 p.m. 2 agents leave the counter while the third agent talks with Meng over the next 25 minutes. 1:09 p.m. The 2 agents return to the counter where Meng is asked more questions. 1:13 p.m. One of the agents leaves and Meng is allowed to go to the bathroom. 1:55 p.m. Meng is again interviewed by an agent for 14 minutes and is questioned about her role with Huawei. During this time, Meng is compelled to hand over the passcodes to her electronic devices. 2:11 p.m. Meng is taken away from counter 21 so that she can be arrested by the RCMP. 2:15 p.m. Meng is taken into a room where the RCMP interact with her for the first time, and she is told why she has been arrested and of her right to obtain counsel. 2:27 p.m. Meng requests to speak with a lawyer, as per one of the RCMP officer's notes. 3:20 p.m. Meng is able to call legal counsel from YVR. The above timeline is from the Memorandum of Fact and Law application for disclosure between applicant Meng Wanzhou and respondent, the Attorney General of Canada, on behalf of the United States of America. So it is totally legitimate. The full memorandum is included in the Meng/Huawei online library, link posted at the end of this article. Note the fact in the above timeline, when Meng was seized by 2 CBSA agents at the airport jetway, 2 RCMP officers are observing. Above, an image, Meng's Vancouver Airport arrest report signed by her in Chinese, Meng Wanzhou, and filled out by RCMP agent Dawn But, identified in the timeline below. Notice that none of Meng's nor her companion's electronic devices are listed. Only Meng's personal effects and clothing are listed. Sloppy law enforcement record keeping or another motive? Back to the article. For most of us, likely including Meng, there is a huge difference in perception between dealing with immigration, CBSA, and police, RCMP officers. Immigration greets us at the airport and stamps our passports, asking mostly innocuous questions about our visits. Yet not realized by most of us, immigration can serve court-ordered arrests. Thus, why did the RCMP officers, who were standing right there, not arrest Meng directly? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. It was likely to give Meng the impression that she only had a problem with her Canadian paperwork, since she had been a legal resident of Vancouver since 2001, not that she was being set up for extradition to the USA on criminal charges. Notice in the above timeline, CBSA held and questioned Meng for 2.5 hours, 11:45 a.m. to 2:15 p.m., where, and I quote the timeline, Meng is again interviewed by an agent for 14 minutes and is questioned about her role with Huawei. During this time, Meng is compelled to hand over the passcodes to her electronic devices. This timeline strongly suggests an illegal sting operation to get Meng to innocently spill the beans to immigration about her case in Huawei, give up all her passcodes to electronic devices that CBS took and later turned over to RCMP, not to mention the devices of Meng's still anonymous travel companion from Hong Kong. Can you picture these CBSA, wearing wiretaps to record Meng's 150 minutes of illegally gained testimony in Chinese and translated into English? Can you envision RCMP turning over all of Meng's and her travel partners' devices with passwords and pre-arrest interrogations to the FBI? Thank you, Santa Claus. Merry Christmas and glory hallelujah. Above is a big Twitter type thing. Text messages between RCMP agents the day before Meng's arrival to plan for her capture. Further and more detailed evidence strongly depicts an FBI and RCMP sting operation from the get-go. From British Columbia Supreme Court documents, we know that on the morning of 30 November 2018, RCMP's Foreign and Domestic Liaison Unit, the FDLU, got emailed about Meng's arrival the next day. This news came from the Department of Justice Vancouver office, abbreviated DOJ-VO. From the time of the first email was received at 8:58 a.m. that day, RCMP and DOJ-VO worked feverishly, receiving a second provisional warrant that included the password-protected, quote, summary of fact for Meng Wanzhou, a Chinese citizen, end of quote. Finally, at 3 p.m., warrant of a provisional arrest in regard to Meng Wanzhou, aliases Kathy Meng and Sabrina Meng. Department of Justice Attorney John Gibb-Carsley provided a copy of the warrant granted by BC Supreme Court Justice Margot Fleming. That from the official court records. With only hours to go until Meng's departure from Hong Kong, they then organized contact numbers for RCMP regional district officers to locate a Mandarin-speaking female officer to assist with the arrest. Two RCMP officers, Dhaliwal and Yep, went to the Vancouver Airport to speak to the Richmond RCMP base there to plan for her arrest. Finally, at 7:52 p.m., the court records say, the provisional warrant for Meng granted by BC Supreme Court Justice Fleming is posted on the Canadian Police Information Center database. Was CBSA ever contacted? I'd say no. One of the cardinal tenets of law enforcement is noting everything down to use later as evidence, and up to now, CBSA was not mentioned. Was the FBI sending instructions to CBSA on the side for plausible deniability? Could be. In any case, 5 hours later, Meng's flight, Cathay Pacific CX-838, left Hong Kong for Vancouver, and the next day's trap was set and loaded. Image above, Meng's CBSA mugshot and declaration card. The next morning, 1 December 2018, starting at 7:30 a.m., the likely real string puller for what I call, quote, Operation Snatch Meng, end of quote, the U.S. FBI was emailing RCMP and CBS agents asking if all systems were go. Notice that now RCMP court records include CBSA as part of the action. 2 hours later, regional and local RCMP and airport CBSA agents had a meeting to plan how Meng's arrest would proceed. The court record indicates 9:30 a.m. Regional RCMP Constable Dhaliwal and Constable Yep attend YVR and have briefing with local RCMP Sergeant Lundy, Constable Dawn But, and airport CBSA officers Scott Kirkland, Sanjit Dillon, and Salmith Katragada. Could the 4 RCMP officers at the airport have arrested Meng as she got off the plane, read Meng her rights to a lawyer, and taken her straight to jail? Of course! But the 3 CBSA officers were certainly used to trick Meng into believing she had a Canadian immigration problem, not U.S. criminal charges. Remember, during the aforementioned timeline, it said, while RCMP officers were watching as it happened. This well-organized trap is further proven by ongoing court records. Please forgive some necessary duplications in the 2 timelines. 11:21 a.m., CBSA Kirkland takes control of 2 cell phones from Meng and 1 cell phone from her companion. 11:30 a.m., Meng in CBSA secondary waiting area. 11:44 a.m., and this one is in bold and underlined. RCMP Yep text to RCMP Dhaliwal, quote, she's been pulled into secondary at CBSA with her female companion. Once they are done, we will serve the warrant on her, end of quote. Need a smoking gun to get Meng's case annulled? I underlined it and put it in bold in case you missed it. As described above, for the next 2.5 hours, the 3 CBS agents illegally detained, questioned, and extracted passwords from Meng and her never-identified travel companion. Again, were they wearing wiretaps, or was this secondary waiting area wired to record audio-visual? I'll bet the banquet bill at an all-you-can-eat stir-fry that they were. Praise the Lord and pass the soy sauce. The court record again confirms it was exactly 150 minutes long. Court records, 2:13 p.m., RCMP Yep and But escort Meng to room C2860.0 at CBSA secondary area. 2:15 p.m., warrant executed. Even then, Meng wasn't read her rights for another 12 minutes, the records indicating 2:27 p.m., Yep read Meng her rights. With everything the Americans needed, the fig leaf of CBSA, quote, turning over, end of quote, Meng to the RCMP was played out. Here's the timeline in the court records. 2:45 p.m., CBSA Katragada handed RCMP Dhaliwal a Hong Kong passport belonging to Meng. 2:59 p.m., RCMP Dhaliwal seizes all personal belongings subsequent to the arrest of Meng. 2 cell phones, 1 iPad, 1 MacBook computer, 1 Cruiser Glide 3.0 256 GB storage, 8 pieces of luggage, including suitcases, handbags, and boxes. 3:32 p.m., 1 brown Bottega brand bag, wallet with money, large Rimowa brand blue suitcase, and 4 rings given to her travel companion as per Meng's request. 3:53 p.m., RCMP Dhaliwal leaves YVR for Richmond RCMP, note that means the police station in Richmond, with Meng's electronic devices. Note below, apparently with Meng too. 4:38 p.m., Dhaliwal observed Meng at Richmond RCMP cells. She is assigned prisoner number 849. 4:44 p.m., Meng fingerprinted and photographed. The booking officer determines she is alert and her state of mind is okay, but her balance is fair. Note, Meng suffers from hypertension and is in cancer remission. 5:06 p.m., Meng escorted to private phone room 407 to await a call. 5:17, Meng picked up phone in room 407. She hung up the phone at 5:25 p.m. Pictured above, the first page of RCMP Constable Winston Yep's testimony surrounding plans to arrest Meng Wanzhou. It and many other relevant documents are available in the Meng/Huawei online library, link at the end of this article. I'd fall over backwards if the Canadians, passwords in hand, did not make copies of all the data from the seized electronic devices. Then I will bet your sweet bippy that the likely éminence grise of this illegal operation, the FBI, had its Vancouver station officer, who was emailing the RCMP and CBSA the whole time, be the courier to ferry all the devices south of the border, along with their recordings of Meng's illegal 2.5-hour interrogation. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Justice Ministers / Attorney General David Lambetti and Jody Wilson-Raybould, British Columbia Supreme Court Justices Heather Holmes, Margot Fleming, and Catherine Kane, Prosecutor John Gibb-Carsley, Politico media star Chrystia Freeland, and their U.S. equivalents can bloviate and pontificate all they want about the West's rule of law, judicial independence, and honoring treaties. Nevertheless, there has never been blind justice, whether it be Canada, USA, China, or elsewhere. If this delusion were true, then why the big uproar about President Trump choosing the seat just vacated on the U.S. Supreme Court? At least China is honest about it, admits this reality, and is trying to make its judicial process more transparent, but never to the point that it endangers the people's freedom and independence from foreign subterfuge. To pretend that the legislative and executive branches of government are political and that the judiciary somehow floats above it all like an ethereal virgin in sacrosanct heaven is absurd and laughable. Thousands of victims like Fred Hampton Jr. and Mumia Abu-Jamal have paid heavy prices for this bitter truth, both of whom I've interviewed. This is beginning to be a bit of a summary here. The preponderance of evidence strongly suggests that the USA worked hand in hand with Canadian law enforcement and its courts to deceive Meng Wanzhou into thinking she was arrested for an immigration problem, was compelled to turn over her electronic devices with their passwords, while being interrogated for 2.5 hours about her work in Huawei, only then to be served her arrest warrant and advised of her rights to a lawyer. The fact that the Canadian courts have refused to acknowledge the illegality of what happened to Meng is all you need to know about what a hollow farce Western rule of law and judicial independence really are. On 25 October 2020, Meng was denied access to have the contents of 6 confidential documents fully released to her legal team after arguing in federal court that the redacted documents would support the position that their client was illegally arrested in Vancouver Airport. Canadian Justice Catherine Kane refused to do so. She claimed the contents were not relevant to the case. If so, why not let Meng's defense lend their opinion? On 9 October 2020, Meng was denied her request to be shown hundreds more documents deemed, quote, confidential by the Canadian authorities related, you guessed it, to all the communication between the USA and Canadian agencies before and after her arrest. Meng's legal team has already complained that all the documents they did get were heavily redacted. It is safe to assume that the Canadian authorities are hiding under intense U.S. pressure. What the Canadians are hiding under intense U.S. pressure involves all the evidence presented here. Is it likely these documents are so damning that Meng's case would have to be thrown out, setting her free? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. And below is the Meng Wanzhou Huawei online library, a link, and you can download the documents. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland, signing out. Have a wonderful day.